Today, I'm going to be taking a bunch of corn, and this is rice, and turning it into this, a whiskey. Is it good though? We'll find out. Let's get stuck in, shall we? I have the mash tun here full with hot water, and I have 5.3 kilos of rice. Let me get this into here, and then we can talk about what it is we're doing. Right now, the water is at 95 degrees Celsius. And my guess is I don't have to worry about grain balls so much with the rice. So I'm just gonna dump it in at about, I don't know, a third or a quarter of it at a time, and give it a good stirring in between each addition. So that is the last of the rice, and you'll probably notice that normally when I'm mashing something, we're at roughly 65 degrees Celsius. We are a whole lot hotter right now. There's a reason for that, and if you're newer to distilling or newer to the channel, you may not have been caught up on this. I got a whole video on it, so I'll link that in the description down below, but here's the too long didn't read answer for it. Think of this big old bit of string, like the starch molecules in the rice right now. Our yeast can't eat that. What it wants is the little teeny tiny bits that are cut down into shorter chains, which are sugars. And for that, and to do that, we're gonna use enzymes. Our enzymes are gonna cut this big thing of starch down into smaller chunks that our yeast can actually eat. But right now, all of that starch is kind of balled up and chunked, and it's really hard for this enzyme to get in here and cut it up. In fact, it can't. So what we need to do is cook the rice. We call it gelatinizing. And what gelatinizing does is essentially loosen this all up. Ooh, where's my end here? So the enzymes can come in and cut bits off. We just need to cook the rice. Normally, when you're working with corn, you need to cook corn as well. But this is malted corn, and the general rule is anything that is malted, so malted barley, malted corn, malted rice. Can you malt rice for brewing? I don't know, I assume so. It's already gelatinized, you don't have to cook it, you just throw it in the water and mash it. Pretty easy. All right, let's have a look at this mash tun, and you'll see what I'm talking about already. This has already gone cloudy, and the liquid has actually thickened up a little bit. I've just realized I need to keep stirring this or it's gonna make like a big rice disc on the bottom. That is all the starch being released out of the rice and into, I guess it's not solution because it's cloudy, suspension in the liquid. Now, we could just boil this as is and then deal with the enzymes later on, but today I'm gonna be using high temperature alpha amylase, which means we can throw it in and use it at these higher temperatures. Let me grab that and we'll throw a little bit in. This is the high temperature alpha amylase. It is a version of one of the enzymes that is the main kind of workhorse in malted barley. So I'm gonna dump some of this in. Don't need a lot, honestly. You need very, very little, and give it a stir. The difference between using kind of the natural enzymes in the malted barley and using this packaged stuff is that the natural enzymes in barley will denature or essentially cook and be broken down at a much lower temperature. If you put the malted barley in here, those enzymes would die off real quick. But because we're using the packaged high temperature version, they're gonna work significantly longer. These are supposed to work at 90 degrees Celsius. I'm up at 95, so we are kind of sacrificing some of these enzymes, but we're doing so to get them working as we're gelatinizing, to stop this getting too thick, too goopy along the way. It's not a whole lot of rice in here, but it's kind of a good practice to get into in case you wanted to do like 100% rice, for example. Now we have the rice in the hot water, the temperature controller holding it at 95 degrees Celsius. We've actually dropped a little under that at the minute. And the high temperature alpha amylase in there, and we have a constant cycle of the hot water gelatinizing starch, and then the alpha amylase cutting those starches down. The problem is this enzyme, the alpha amylase, isn't going to actually cut it down enough for the yeast to eat it. We need to do another step later on. We'll talk about that when we get to it. Right now, all we need to do is let this sit and cook. I'll pop the lid on it to make it a little bit more efficient, and I'll come back and give it a stir every, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, something like that. We'll check in with you at the half-hour mark. All right, team, this has been going for about half an hour. We're on the right track. The rice is a very strange consistency. It's almost like shredded coconut or something. It's not starchy like cooked rice normally is. It needs a little bit more time. A good rule of thumb with this kind of thing is when it starts to go almost translucent, you know that you've got a lot of the starch out of it. It's not there yet, but we still need to deal to the corn. I wanted to give the rice a head start because it really needs to cook. The corn just needs to mash because it's already malted. But here I have 8.5 kilos of corn. I'm going to start getting that in. I kind of forgot how much rice expands when you put it in water. I'm going to need a bit more water in this, I think, to fit everything in. Luckily, we've got some hot water on the go over there in my other pot. Start mashing in with the corn. Adding the corn into the pot here is going to thicken things up quite quickly for two reasons. One, we're just adding more stuff into it, but because the water's quite hot and this is already gelatinized, we're going to be essentially making like a porridge pretty quickly as well. So I'm going to get out ahead of that and add another 2 teaspoons of the enzymes in and keep on adding more corn. All of the corn is now in there. I got a few other things to put in, and it is relatively thick. So I'm going to put, let's just add some water in. I'm guessing that was probably about 3 liters, maybe 4. Looking pretty good now. What do we got next? Well, first up, oats. These have quickly turned into my go-to, I want more mouthfeel in my spirit additive. There's only 1 kilo here, but 1 kilo can do a whole lot, especially for something like this. The thinking is, I don't know exactly what rice is going to do, I'll be real with you, but when you're brewing beer, for example, rice tends to be a relatively good way to add ABV without a whole lot of flavor and without a whole lot of mouthfeel. So I'm thinking the oats might kind of counteract that if true. If it's not true, it's cool. We'll get some more mouthfeel. I'm a Muppet. I also decided to add 600 grams or 0.6 kilos of light chocolate malt. Why? Because I can, and a little bit of extra flavor. You know, once again, we're going away from the whole deciding exactly what rice will do, but I think it'll be delicious. The problem is I forgot that when I ground into here, there was another couple of liters of water in the bottom. So I guess all of that is going into the pot as well. It's not going to hurt anything. This is looking and smelling absolutely freaking delicious, I gotta say. The plan now is to chuck the lid on it. We'll let it sit for another hour with those enzymes in there. I'll drop the temperature down to 90 degrees Celsius. Give it a stir every 20 minutes or so. The mash has been going for a little bit over an hour now, about an hour and a quarter, and it is looking delicious. Very dark. I guess there is a decent amount of chocolate malt in there. Let's do an iodine test. Here's the deal, team. You take a little bit of liquid out of the mash tun, pop it onto a white plate so you can see color easily. Put a tiny little dab of iodine into the middle of it. If it goes a very dark purple or jet black, it means you've still got a decent amount of starch in that mash. If it stays the kind of orangey brown color for like 10 seconds, you're probably pretty damn good. I'm using iodophor, and this does have a tendency to go dark eventually no matter what. So I kind of mix it in, have a look. If it's still orange after about 10 seconds, I'm pretty damn happy. And the gravity, I've just checked on this. Let me double check because I can't remember the exact number. Okay, we're at 1090. So that's pretty good. I'm happy with that. I'm confident we've got relatively good starch conversion. Now the plan is to turn the power off and let this drop down to about, well, between 60 and 65 degrees Celsius, so we can add the next enzyme. The mash is now down at 63.3 degrees Celsius, which is great because I'm about to add glucoamylase into this mash, which is the last enzyme that will cut the sugar chains all the way down into bite-sized yummy pieces for our yeast. And this has an upper tolerance of 65. So I've waited until I got down below 65 degrees Celsius. This one takes even less. I guess it's stronger. I'm just going to do literally a teaspoon of that. And I think that's partially because as long as you don't actually denature it, it's going to continue working in the fermenter, essentially, because we're not going to boil like you would with beer. Hopefully, it'll mean that this will ferment out pretty much bone dry. So the glucoamylase needs to sit for at least half an hour at a decent temperature. This isn't going to cool down that quickly, so I'm just going to turn everything off and let this start cooling down towards our pitching temperature. That should be absolutely fine.
Half an hour later, it's time to drain the mash tun directly into the fermenter, adding some more hot water to sparge with. Give it a good stir and drain it out again. Let the fermenter cool down to pitching temperature, about 34 degrees Celsius for me. A good oxygenation to be nice to our yeast. I'm using AM1 today. I'm going to throw some of that into the tub and let it go for about 4 or 5 days.
A quick note to say that this is one of my favorite yeasts. The value proposition for home distillers is pretty damn good, and it does an excellent job, especially in spirits like the one I'm making today. If you're interested in getting some, you can get it at chasethecraft.com. And finally, it's back in stock in America. We have it in both warehouses at the moment.
Would you look at that? We did do our job properly with the enzymes, and it did in fact ferment out dry. I'm going to do a stripping run with roughly half of the wash put into the pot, set up in pot still mode, and for this one I'm going to distill down real low. It's down to about 2% ABV for the stripping run.
The size of the fermentation kind of fell into that weird volume where it's too much to fit into a pot and do a one and run. It's not really enough to do double distillation. So we have the low wines from the first and only stripping run in the pot, along with the remaining wash, and I'm running 2 plates and a deflag. We're just starting to drip at the moment. I'm actually going to bump the power up a little bit and speed this flow up. I'll collect some 4 shots, and then we can settle in and wait, trying to find our cut point from heads to hearts. Now that we're definitely in 2 hearts, I'm collecting in a bigger vessel. Just noticed the flow rate's dropped a little bit, bumped the power. This isn't a big run. I don't expect to be here literally all night, but while I know I'm definitely in hearts, I'll keep collecting into this. And when we start to get to the point where I think maybe tails are coming, we'll switch back over to the smaller jars. The run is getting on now. I'm starting to taste more of the kind of intense, deeper, grainy flavors. Right now, still good, but that tends to be a herald for tails coming soon. So, pretty borderline right now. So the plan is to sit here, collect a little bit into a jar,
Taste. Decide I still want to keep it. Tip it into the large container I've got. And carry on collecting a little bit more. The idea being that if we suddenly sort of go past good hearts into tails that I don't want to keep, or I, get distracted for a couple of minutes and get past that point, we're not putting the bad stuff into the hearts, and I can just call it quits there. I do believe that point is coming very soon. Time to get this proof down to, I'm thinking probably like 62% ABV for this one. And we can have a think about aging it.
So I proofed that spirit down to 62% ABV. Here's some of that unadulterated white. This one is still at 62% ABV, but we used the Chase the Craft maturation sticks, available at chasethecraft.com. Here is the other half of the stick I actually used. It was toasted in the oven at 185 degrees Celsius for an hour and a half. Then I split it. So each of these two jars got a quarter of a stave each, with a very light charring on all their sides. This one has just been sitting for almost a week now. I think it's been 6 days. This one is exactly the same, except it had a 4-hour hot bath at 52 degrees Celsius for 4 hours. On the same day that the wood went into both of these, ever since then it's just been sitting and chilling. So, shall we go through and taste them all? Okay, on the nose, yes, I get corn. Yes, I definitely get some of the fruitiness from the AM1 yeast, which is good. It's hard to tell, but I think maybe I do get a slightly steamed rice aroma off it. That's really faint though, compared to the corn and the yeast. It is a little fiery, I'll give it that. 62%, but a little fiery than I would expect from corn. It's more like barley or white barley spirit. I do get some of that chocolate in the mid palate, which is very nice. What I don't get is an emptiness of flavor that I was thinking I might get from the rice. So that is very, very encouraging. All right, the version that's just had wood in it for about a week. I'm not expecting this to be much different, although I am surprised at the color. That one stave is imparted over just a week. I guess it is a fair amount of wood for spirit, but still kind of crazy. Okay. Definitely getting some of the toasty side of the wood. Funnily enough, it's less fiery already. There's nothing interesting happening in terms of esterification and so on and so forth. It's expected. It's been in there for a week. It tastes like a slightly smoother version of this with some oak crammed on top of it. This is an interesting one because it's been a while since I've done a side-by-side, force-aged and not force-aged. So let's see if there's anything to the force-aging. Similar aroma, but it smells more like an aged product. Slightly more rounded. Okay, the mouthfeel is significantly better. There is a hint. It's very, very close to cherry. It's not quite, it's more like cherry plum, which definitely isn't in this, which is interesting because that, I have to imagine, is an esterification type thing going on, like being forced to happen quicker because of the heat. It's very faint, but it is also very definitely there. It's lost some of that, like, fresh shine flavor. I think that's why it feels more vibrant. It doesn't have that sitting over the top of it, kind of muddying up the flavors. I'm going to label both of these jars properly because I will be interested to see how these evolve over time. I've often wondered if giving something like this a jump start with heat treatment and then letting it go for 6 months, a year is kind of the way to go for home distillers. So it'll be interesting to see these two side by side in 6 months' time, perhaps. I'm not seeing any specific and overwhelming downsides to using that rice. I can't really point to a giant upside in terms of flavor. there is, like, in all of three of them, there is a very subtle steamed rice thing going on. It also isn't kind of void of flavor. I'm still getting plenty of flavor from the chocolate malt and the corn, and now the wood as well. So I have to say this is kind of viable, guys. I guess specifically for me here in New Zealand, there's not really a giant price advantage for using rice over barley just to bulk this up. But depending on where you are in the world, where prices are different, there might be a significant advantage to using at least some rice over corn or barley if you don't want to just throw sugar into a wash like this. So that is interesting. Very interesting. All right, team, we'll see what happens to this in the future. If anyone has any recommendations on what to do with some of this white spirit, please let me know, and I will catch you next time. Keep chasing. See ya.